Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 33 of From the Van. It's a podcast from my van, where I have conversations with people who have relationships with residential vehicles. But not today. See, today's episode features our first tiny house guests. Becca and Jeremy, for the last couple of years, were living on Colette's dad's property in a tiny house that he helped them build. And I wanted to have them on the podcast to talk about the similarities and dissimilarities between van life and tiny house living. They've moved on into a larger place, and it's interesting. It was interesting to hear them talk about the way that minimal living has affected their appetite for spreading out, the way that they do it, and where they would like to see themselves living on down the road. Just a quick disclaimer. There was a wedding shower for Jeremy's brother before this episode. I had a couple of beers. But fortunately, not only do Becca and Jeremy have a great relationship with Colette, they're both very insightful and articulate people. So we had a good conversation despite me. If you think that it's obnoxious that I was a little sauced during the episode, you're right. If you think it's hilarious, you're welcome. Please enjoy episode 33 of From the Van, featuring Becca and Jeremy.
But yeah, you know, I kind of like this. I did a similar thing. I was renting a room from my buddy, and it was like basically like their garage add-on.
Hi.
And they had the worst.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Like, what's it? Not weatherproofing, but like heat insulation. So I took these boards and I shoved stuffing into this little crack in the wall, and I just took boards like this, like plywood, but they were 2x4s, and I just ran them along the ceiling, and I didn't even bolt them in like this. I just put nails in so that they were resting on all these nails, so that I had this one board of insulation going around the room, because it was like a $300 a month rent, and it was this damn garage side. But you gotta just fix whatever you gotta do, you know, like just make it work.
That was right before the tiny house, right?
Yeah, did you ever go there?
Yeah. No, but I heard, because that's where you got the cats from.
Yeah, we got the cats there, and we had a couple like small, like I think I had my 30th there. So I thought maybe you might have been around.
Maybe once.
That's all right.
In Vista, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it was fun.
It's entirely possible.
Yeah, and I slept in that.
It depends on how stoned I was that day.
I know. I can't believe you stayed with me through that.
For like, I know. That's the true test of a relationship, man. We stayed in that for like a year, and that did nothing. I just gotta tell you, I was freezing every night.
The insulation?
Really
I didn't do shit.
No? Okay. You can be a shithead. It's fine.
You don't know what to do.
Fuck you.
Hi.
What do you think, mister? Wait, so you guys lived in this place for a year before?
At least a year.
The first year that we were together, but he moved in there, so it was
maybe
his
like
place
6 months before that.
like 6 months before or something. Yeah. Yep, and that was our first, like, tiny house, that it was just this room, basically.
Yeah, just a room.
It was a
attached.
converted garage, basically.
Where was it?
So.
Vista?
Vista.
Yeah, I have a couple buddies who live out there, and they just got married and they needed a little extra cash. So like, we'll rent you this garage space, you know? And I was like, okay.
Yeah. And then I moved in, but didn't move
But it
in.
was basically, like, it kind of prepped us for the tiny home.
Yeah.
Because we didn't have anything. We didn't have, like, real facilities. We didn't have a kitchen. We didn't have...
Yeah, the tiny home was
We had
a
a bathroom.
step
That
up
was it.
from
Yeah.
that, for
We
sure.
had a half
Sure.
Yeah.
And it was your idea, wasn't it?
The tiny house, yeah. Yeah, so I had already been saving for the tiny house for a while, and then you and I kind of met and then started dating. And I kind of floated the idea, like, hey, it was originally I was going to convert a school bus, but then as he and I started talking and doing more research, it turned into a tiny house. So we tiny housed.
So we tiny house.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Right after that spot.
Yeah.
Right after that spot.
At
We
Tim's
actually
place.
transitioned halfway. So, like, because she had been spending so much time there, I think my friends were ready to get us out of there. You know,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
they had a baby.
They're like, we're
family,
married.
they had only been married for like a year.
We don't need your money anymore.
Like, we don't
Dump
need it
the cats
enough
on
for
you.
you and your cats and your girlfriend to be here. Like, we don't need it that much.
Yeah.
And so they kind of were like, yeah, so we're going to be asking you to move out in like 4 to 6 months, if that's, if you can figure
Oh, that's a big cushion, dude.
Oh, it was.
Yeah.
And that's when
Most
we
of the
built
time when
tiny
you
house.
get evicted, it's
Yeah,
like,
it's like-
real
Well, that's
fast.
how
30
it spreads,
days,
you know?
like,
It was,
Fuck out.
it was a friend eviction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was
No, they were chill overall, but like I don't know. I was basically living there. I was there like five days a week, and then they were like, "All right, we gotta like get rolling with
Figure
this
it
tiny
out."
house thing."
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
So how did it work? It was on the plantation,
the compound.
the
People who don't
compound.
know,
Yeah.
so Jeremy and Becca are my step siblings in a way.
Yep.
Jeremy's
Right.
my step sibling, and Becca
We're
is
an
his lovely
expanded
fiance.
family. Yeah.
And I lived on a big compound that was enormous that started with me in the apartment, my dad and my stepmom in the house, and my stepbrother Joe, and does he call her his fiance? I always say it because they're like,
Oh, I forgot Molly and
they're
Joe
like
were there.
our
Yeah.
fiancés. Molly and Joe were downstairs in the
For a year.
what was
We'll call them
converted.
permanent homies.
Yeah,
They have
permanent
a
homies.
permanent homiehood.
They
Yeah.
that was converted from the garage into a guest house when I was a kid that we did
Yeah.
a long time ago. So I grew up in that house.
That's the
big
spot.
property.
On the compound.
So it
That's
became
the
the-
king.
The good
It
one.
was.
Yeah.
I don't know. I loved the apartment.
Well, by the time
I'm
you got
small.
to it, it was prime.
Oh, it was gorgeous. Because you lived in it and Jeff lived in it before me. And by the time I got there, my dad had cleaned it out and made
Yeah.
it nice again.
So you were living in an accessory dwelling unit that was like had a separate entrance from
Yeah.
the house.
Yeah, totally
And then
separate. And my own porch.
And then the garage thing that we're talking about that Joe and Molly lived in was
Totally
a
separate.
garage that was like also a whole apartment sort of situation. And then
Yeah.
you guys came in and Tim basically helped you build out
Yeah.
a
so it's-
little tiny house.
Right.
Yeah, we call it a
Yeah.
tiny house, but it's more like an fancy shed. Like a shed plus.
Shed
because,
deluxe.
Yeah, most
Yeah.
tiny homes are
How'd you figure
mobile.
it out?
Yeah.
Like, what does it look like? How did it happen?
Originally, after we had kind of scratched the whole converting the school bus thing,
Did you have a school bus?
We shopped
we
for
shopped
some.
for school
Okay.
buses,
Okay.
and our prospects were pretty like bleak. So
Okay.
we were like,
Oh.
yeah. So after we actually did a workshop for tiny house building, and they kind of laid everything down and said, you need to start with the trailer foundation, then build up from there. So then we were shopping for trailers. And then about that time, I think you had told your mom that we were investing in doing a tiny house. And then she
Yeah,
said
that you were
well,
really interested in, and we were looking at it.
yeah. And then I think she came to us and said, well, you guys can
Yeah, so they
do
floated the
that
offer
on
to
the
us.
property.
Just do it
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They
okay.
floated the offer to us.
Yeah.
And I'm not even sure why. Like, I never really thought about it, but I don't really know why
They
my
were
mom or
scared
Tim.
for you.
You think so? You think they're
It's
like, that's a
possible.
really
I
bad
think it was
idea?
a parent
Like,
move, I
I
think.
mean,
It was
let's
a
not let
huge
'em
piece
do
of
it.
property, though, too. It was
Yeah.
like, why not?
Yeah, I know, but like they're not the. It doesn't seem to me like they're just like we'd love to have 2 more adult people on the property like hanging out. Like why not? Like
We were that people were
Yeah.
like, where do you live? I'm like, well, I pretty much live on a compound.
well,
Yeah.
at a certain point there was
There
like
were
6 of
7 of
us
us.
living there besides
7.
them, like on top of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I mean, I
Yeah,
guess
it
Maya wasn't
it
fully there. She was
Maya
kinda
was
in and out,
Maya was never really there
But it was
anymore.
me,
so it was 7 really.
Becca, you,
permanent.
Joe, and Molly. I mean, that's a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but on 2 acres.
It was a party. For a
Well, yeah,
while.
you didn't notice. Like you didn't feel it.
We didn't see each
The
other
worst
that
thing was
much
probably
even.
parking. I mean, this
Yeah.
is California,
I know.
right?
Spots.
I know, it was big enough
Worst thing
that
is
we
parking.
like hardly ever saw each other for the occasional like Sunday brunch or something.
You'd be like,
like
oh, I
that.
haven't seen you in 2 weeks. You
Yeah.
live on the other side of the
No,
property.
yeah, at least 2 weeks. But that's how the evolution came about because the bus just turned out not to be feasible for us. It was kind of like figuring out what works for you, like almost like finding the right size because we didn't have the mechanical ability to do the bus.
Sure.
It was hard to find a bus in shape that could move around, so you needed to have it towed somewhere. Then you're gonna have to do all the retrofitting like you did here in the van.
Yeah.
So that became like ooh, is it really worth it? And then the trailer thing was the same issue. We weren't so focused on being mobile I think, which is a big thing for here with the van.
Yeah, sure.
We were more focused on living in a small like space so we weren't spending so much of our income on rent. Like that was for us the biggest move, and then just being able to enjoy a space that was our own. So like that was why we didn't do the bus, and we didn't end up doing the trailer, because when we looked into the cost, it's basically the same as building the shed like we did, which was about $5,000. But then you have to spend somewhere between $1,200 and $3,600 on a trailer on the base. So it's like, wow, we can save $3,000 and have the same exact dwelling. Just know that we're not going to take it with us.
Yeah. Right.
It is now a real temporary tiny home, not a mobile tiny home.
Yeah, and I think when we were looking into, okay, now it's not going to be a mobile tiny house, what are the rules, basically? We just figured out that it had to be within a certain like square footage. So it did we had to scratch a lot of ideas that we had to make it a certain square footage, like especially with the bus. We actually had to downsize from the bus
to the tiny house.
What we thought we were going to have,
way.
when you're playing with those like ideas of how much space you'll have.
Okay.
Yeah.
The bus was bigger than the tiny
You were looking at the long buses?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
big
the
ones.
like I think like 40 something foot buses.
Wow,
So,
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was originally the plan, and then and then it turns out like in California, what was it, like a 120 square foot or something like that?
Well,
That
our
sounds
deluxe shed is a little bit pushing the legal boundaries for sheds. But it's pretty close. It's pretty dang close. Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell us, what did it look like? What did it end up looking like?
You want to
We
do
know,
dimensions and kind of walk through?
Yeah, so it was 10 by 12, and then we had about a 6 by 10 loft.
Yeah, it was high, right?
Yeah, it was high.
It was up high.
That's
yeah.
where we pushed that boundary for shed size. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was 10 wide and 12 deep, and then we had our little kitchen underneath the loft. We DIY'd a little ladder from some
Piping into my
EMT like bar and piping and stuff.
Yeah.
And it totally worked. It was like our little treehouse.
Because
kind
that's
of.
So
the
you
fun
slept
part.
up top,
We
right?
did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've only ever
I saw that one time.
I think I walked in there one time when you guys were living there.
Like when I
Yeah.
first met you.
And
Yeah.
then,
We saw
like a
it
few
empty.
months ago, we saw it empty.
We
Yeah.
went
Oh,
by.
you checked
we
out the
went
house?
by to
Yeah.
go take a swim in the pool.
After-
now that it was full.
Yeah, after
Oh,
Tim
is
fixed the
it?
pool
Wait,
Oh,
up.
and it's like a
we
nice
walked
backyard.
inside. Yeah. We went inside and saw. It was
Yeah.
weird to see it all empty, but
That was super
we
empty.
checked it out.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a nice
You had that
little home
beautiful
for a year and
window.
a half, almost 2 years.
2.5 years.
Really? Jesus.
Yeah, I'm like, wait a minute.
What
When's our anniversary, babe? No.
what complications did you run into, like living in that little space, if any?
I mean, you're definitely like living on top of each other a
Yeah.
bit, so it's like an adjustment of definitely like trying to find space and alone time. Mm-hmm. And I think just naturally, he and I just kind of gravitate. I was more like, I would spend my time up in the loft. I would do all my work up in the loft. I would, like have my headphones on. Headphones are key, man. He invested in some like nice headphones and just wore the shit out of those. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, that was basically how we like created space. But for the most part, like it was, kind of like an extreme bonding experience
Yeah.
too, because we were there for over 2 years, and you just kind of like learn to,
We
live
definitely
on top of
realized,
each other.
yeah,
I mean, you guys know, right?
Space creates boundaries.
when we
Well,
walked
yeah,
into
yeah.
that, when we walked into that building, I was
We're
like,
like,
"This is a
"Whoa."
fucking mansion."
Yeah.
Well, okay, and the bathroom was separate
Yes.
from
Yeah.
the house. 'Cause
Yes.
square footage wise, you had to deal with that shit. So
Right.
next to it was a miniature little thing.
But-
Did it have a shower in it? I never went in there.
It had a
to
shower,
use your toilet.
Yeah.
shower and a toilet, but it was a
Nice.
tinkle toilet.
Yeah, let's make sure we're
We called
aware
it.
that was not like
What does
a
that
fully
mean?
operational
They
toilet.
snuck up to the house. To
Number
take
2
shits.
went to the upstairs.
Number 2
yeah.
went upstairs. Yeah.
So
But,
definitely need to clear that up. Like we did have this like outhouse with a shower next door, but I basically went pee outside, and then we just used upstairs for like the main stuff.
Yeah.
It was really just a shower to get ready for
But
work.
the shower was fully
Sure.
functional. We had like a miniature water heater underneath, so we did
It was
have
perfect.
hot
Yeah,
water.
15 minutes hot water. Like
Yeah, it was totally functional, for everything except for number 2.
Yeah.
Luckily, we don't have locks on the doors in the Fallbrook house, so it's
That's
like,
true too.
Yeah, it was easy
Came right
to
in.
deal with.
But like you
so.
said, it's big. No one's going down there to check out what you're doing.
I never went into your bathroom.
Yeah, I don't think most people did.
I can't hang out with you
not that
guys.
When you
in the
tell
tiny
people
house.
that tiny little box is a bathroom, they're like, cool. They're not like, let me see inside.
I'm like, great, I've seen this. Don't need to see your bathroom.
Yeah, they might be
What,
afraid that we just
cool?
recently used it too. So like, it's fine.
It was like a pre-made like shower stall that we put in there, and it was the smallest like shower stall that I've ever seen, and it's hardly functional. But
See, a lot of that wasn't
Yeah.
weird for me. Yeah.
really,
No,
That
'cause
was
I-
Did you
hard?
use it to shower?
yeah,
Yeah. For 2.5 years?
for 2.5 years, yeah,
Cool. But
Yeah.
you were uncomfortable the whole time?
a little bit, yeah.
Oh, shit.
How often did you go upstairs and use the shower?
Like in the beginning, I would go up there a lot, like.
When it wasn't done?
It depends on,
It
and
was
then
just-
also who's
sure.
home and how much is going on.
Well, yeah, and I think I just was used to like going up there more, and then
Yeah.
towards the end, I think we were just like we got in our like self-sufficient mode. We were like,
Yeah.
whatever, we'll just shower down here. We'll just stay down here
Yeah.
as much as possible. So
Well,
yeah,
I
like
used to-
we worked it out.
When you first started, I'd come home and the kitchen inside the house would smell incredible because they'd be cooking upstairs.
Yeah, we use the kitchen upstairs a lot
That-
too.
I used it when I could too, when no one was home because it was so
Oh,
big.
yeah.
Yeah, it's huge. It's
My
a great
kitchen and your kitchen, same deal.
Yeah.
was so
See, that-
small.
Ours
that's-
we had a hot plate. Like, it wasn't really a kitchen.
Yeah,
That's what I had. I
Yeah.
had a 2-burner hot plate, a microwave, and a sink.
And see, we couldn't even use the second burner because
Because our power, we tripped the breaker if we
Yeah.
ran too much
Oh,
stuff.
wow.
So
Yeah.
that was another thing. We had to really be careful about that.
We had a really short like electrical wire, so we couldn't like run the heater and cook at the same time. And,
No, we learned real quick how
yeah,
to
we
do
learned
it.
really
Yeah.
quick how to deal with it. So it was, it's as functional as like we made it. We definitely worked out like a lot of the kinks and stuff, but yeah, every time the main house was vacant, we'd be like, "Oh, there's an oven up there. Let's like go bake something."
I did
Like,
the same thing. I was
Yeah,
like, I'm
yeah.
gonna-
Or I'm going to go
oven.
take a 20-minute shower instead of a 15-minute shower.
yeah. Well,
And it's
instead
like,
of a 5
glorious.
minutes.
Did you ever think about doing solar on it? Because you were just regular, like,
So
whatever the fuck
It
you
was
call
pretty
it. power.
temporary.
I feel
right?
like that's a
Yeah.
more permanent investment, and that's what
Yeah.
you kind of start thinking
Sure.
about. You start thinking about things like, okay, wait a minute, like now that we know what the purpose for this space is, we're not mobile. We're going to go to school. We're going to be a little bit more in our community and more permanent.
Sure.
How long is it going to be? And then you start
Right.
thinking, okay, where are my upgrades? What's important? Like, what can I take with me, and what's going to stay in the space? So solar was one of those things. It was like, yeah, we could do it. It'd be really cool. We could tell people about it and show people how we did that and whatever. But in the end, it was like, that's it. That's all it would be. It'd be a project. It wouldn't
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
helpful to our situation.
I'm so stoked on solar. Just after building the system on top of this van.
Oh, yeah? You guys
Like-
are solar?
There's 300 watts on
That's
top.
300 watts on top.
Nice.
We can run the
Yeah, they sit pretty
Instant
low.
Pot,
You can't really see it.
and it's like invisible, and I'm so jazzed on it. But the deal is, like, if you're in a space that you're not going to stay at, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, or like keep. Like, you're going to have this van for a bit, right? Until you upgrade.
Or-
Or I'm going to sell it to somebody who will appreciate
We'll
the solar
understand
that's on
why,
the top,
why
Right.
it's in there.
Yeah.
Like, they want this, either I'm gonna keep it or sell it to somebody who wants the solar.
Yeah.
And so, but like,
Come up here.
every time I go somewhere, like
Wait,
my
tree?
buddy's got a house in Joshua Tree, and I go to visit him, and he doesn't have any solar on top of his house.
And you're like, what?
And I'm like, motherfucker, you could be off the grid and have an air conditioner
Yeah.
that runs completely guilt-free.
You have a generator right here
Yeah.
all day.
Like,
Well, now that we're living in the
24/7.
desert, we understand the
Yeah.
expense of
you guys
constant
are in
AC.
Palm Springs
Sure.
now, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
What's the deal there?
So same thing. We're basically like becoming experts at alternative living situations. Yeah.
We all got kicked out.
What does that mean?
We have a family
You
deal
guys got
with the rental
soft
there.
evicted.
Again for our second time.
Yes, we
You
did.
had to stay longer than anyone else. I was very
Yeah,
jealous.
you know what? There's this really interesting thing. It's about being polite and friendly. People will really go.
Which you suck at.
I'm not saying you do. I'm saying my other family members who may not have been able to stay as long. Like there's a long. It's very easy to for people to take that extra minute and say, "Hey, we'll give you some time to get your act together and get out of here."
They did.
When they're happy to when they have a good relationship with you. When that relationship is really negative, they're like, "Go, bye, get out." Like so
they hate me.
It's like good.
No, he's not saying that they had a negative relationship. What I think you're saying is you would scratch Tim's back and he would scratch your
Basically,
back.
like,
yeah,
but you should just do that in general. Like, as long as you do that in general, you can tend to get more from people. It's like the honey, work goes farther than whatever.
I'm
really good at my analogies
I got
tonight.
like 2 extra
Honey
weeks.
catches
That
more
was-
flies than vinegar. Is that how that shit goes?
See,
Something
that's
like
why we're
that.
together. But yeah, that's how that worked. We got lucky. We were the we had a good relationship
how-
with them, and they were like, "Hey, get your stuff
They didn't
together."
have to do
like,
anything for your piece.
Oh, that's true, too. We were in the
they
corner
had-
of the
He had to
property.
do a bunch of
Yeah.
remodeling to my apartment.
That's true.
Oh, so it looks even better now.
Because he never finished the trim. He put carpet in, never finished the trim.
Yeah, I
it's like-
bet that place looks
and
amazing
Some
right
of the
now.
lights were off, and like the shower stopped working by the end. And
Yeah,
I
think I went in there and to use the shower and it was all cold, and I was like, "Tim, what?"
It was like trickle. It was like a trickle by the end, but I was like pretty much living with Marty. That I was like, whatever.
Yeah.
I wasn't there enough, so when I
didn't
needed
matter.
to,
No,
I
no,
just
that's
used
how it
their
works,
shower
yeah.
because they had a fantastic shower.
yeah.
I don't know what to give you, dude. I have nothing for you.
He's got
wants
those
your
puppy dog
love.
eyes, man.
Yeah.
Here you got eye boogies.
So what's your program now then? You guys are getting married in like 8 months or something?
Yeah. June 20th, 2020, baby.
Yeah, that's us.
We're getting there.
The program now is we're milking this very nice living situation with my family. In Palm Springs, which is awesome. And then we're kind of thinking that the desert might be an area for us to settle, just because it's a lot less people and it's a lot less expensive. And we kind of like both of those things, which is what led us to the whole tiny home thing in the first place. It was like, I'm not going to spend $1,400 on rent, for us to just get by. Like it's a terribly unfun
Well, even that
way to
is
deal with life.
is impossible to find in Southern California.
Oh, I know. I was
Sure.
rounding. I was just making some number up.
Yeah, so originally like going to Palm Springs, we had been talking about moving to the desert. Originally, actually, we were talking about buying a piece of land in the desert and building the tiny house on there.
Yeah.
So the desert has always been kind of like a
Draw.
destination for us.
Yeah.
And then we have this opportunity to basically try it out. So that's kind of what we're doing right now. We're doing a trial period, and then we're looking to maybe go on and buy something small and then fix it up.
It's hot as fuck though.
But
It is,
only
yeah.
for 3 months. It's really fascinating. And I that sounds crazy. Like for 3
No,
months
no,
of your
no.
life.
Please tell me because I
3
just
not too
can't
bad.
even. My
Yeah,
brain
yeah.
doesn't.
Are you?
Quarter of the year.
I know you're coastal because I know you guys do Encinitas and a lot of Carlsbad. But are you coastal because you love like the temperature, the climate, and the water, or are you coastal just because you're a Cali kid and this is just kind of like?
Well, I grew up in South Carolina, dude. Like,
Oh yeah, that's right.
I'm like hot, humid, like dangerous weather all the time. But like I've been here for 16 years, and so I'm a baby now.
Yeah.
Like I can't handle heat, man. And so like when I hear about people moving to Joshua Tree or Palm Desert or Palm Springs or something, I'm like,
Thank you.
Yeah,
fuck would you do that?
Joshua
dude?
Tree is the lesser of the evils, actually. It's about
Yeah, Joshua Tree's got
10,
better weather.
10 to 15 degrees cooler in Joshua Tree at any
Than
given
Palm
day.
Springs?
Than
Yeah.
Palm Springs. Yeah.
Jesus.
They actually
Yeah.
brag about it.
Is
The,
it
the
really?
people who live in Joshua Tree are like, it's so much nicer here. You're like, what?
Yeah.
It's like 8 degrees, dude. They're like, it's 10.
That sounds
like
so
great, good for
gnarly.
you.
Yeah, we like when we went to move out there, I think we were like almost like psyching ourselves out, like it's gonna be really fucking hot, like we need to.
We moved out there
You know.
June 1st this year.
Yeah, so we saw pretty much the whole summer, and it really wasn't that bad. Like, you stay
Did you
inside.
spend it without AC?
No, we had AC.
No, we had AC.
The AC is
Yeah.
pretty cheap too,
No.
huh?
No.
Not like Vegas.
So our summer bill was $400 a month, and then
Jesus.
our bill right
Talk
now.
about not spending money
Yeah.
on rent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're like,
Well, like I said, we're in
spending
that unique situation.
$400
so I understand that.
You're not paying
Woo,
rent
Full
or
rent.
anything,
Yeah, we're not paying
so-
full rent. So it's easy to pay all the utilities and
Yeah,
stuff.
but the
it drops
AC
to
bill
$150, right?
alone
so
is-
it drops substantially. So you're only paying that for 3 months.
Uh-huh.
And then you drop down to $150. Now, I'm guessing in the winter we're going to hit a little bit of a heat bill. Probably for like December, January.
Yeah, it's already starting to get a little chilly right now.
You gotta just snug super hard, right?
But a lot of that is choices too. Yeah, like do you run your AC in your heat or do you wear more clothes? Like all of this stuff is
Or do you,
know,
cuddle
lifestyle.
all winter,
yeah.
babe? You gonna cuddle?
That's hot.
Yeah. I also like the heat. Like I'm not gonna lie. Like I really, really like being hot. I don't like being cold.
Yeah.
I don't like the snow.
I'm the opposite,
I don't like
dude.
sleet. I
Oh,
don't like
really?
any of that. I don't like the coldness in my bones. Like
I'm the opposite.
see, yeah, that's why for you it's like, how
The
do you do
last
it? It's like,
4
oh
or
dude, I'm
5
like a
days.
lizard, man. I'm like, oh yeah.
I can deal with the hot or the cold. I just can't stand humidity.
Well, we don't have
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, so
Yeah, we
that's
don't
great.
have
Come on
Ever.
out. Come visit. Come on out.
We do.
You guys
We
should
want
make sure you
Not
try
in
to
the
come
summer.
out during like the cool season and come out like in the heat, just to see, for like a day, just be like, damn man. Nope.
We're like, no, that's not
Yeah.
for us.
So let's go back to tiny houses. Like,
Well,
what's the benefit? What's the advantage of a tiny house?
So for me, it's not like what's the advantage of the tiny house. It's more like what do you need the regular space for, right? So the tiny home, I didn't feel like I was losing anything. It wasn't like, oh, now I don't have what I used to have in my other space. And again, like I had just moved out of a garage, and before that, I'd been living on the property in Colette's room. So like, as far as me being used to like a regular living situation, it's not really a thing. So I rented a room by myself when I was in college for like $900 a month. And I was like, this sucks. I have people above me. I have people on both sides of me. And I'm just paying this jerk who owns this plot of land, like for this room. And I'm not allowed to do X, Y, and Z in this room at certain times and whatever. And I didn't see what I was losing by moving to a garage attachment or to a tiny home, right?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't feel much loss at all. So I think Becca maybe there was more theirs. For me, it was just like, I'm winning. I'm winning on the rent and I'm winning on, just being in more control of my space.
Yeah, I think I felt the same way. Like it's always been really important to me to like own my own space and be able to do with that space whatever I want.
yeah.
So a tiny house was the most accessible choice for me to do that. Like I could design my own home. I could, make it exactly what I wanted, due to my financial situation at the time. And then it would also kind of free me up to not have to worry about, where I was living. We were living on a beautiful property. We spent a lot of time outside. So
In
it
Fallbrook, I mean, Jesus, it's gorgeous.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we, for us, it was like a draw to be outside. Our cats loved it. Our cats were outside all the time. It was
My love.
of which Colette is the godmother of our cat children.
When they were building it, they came to live with me.
Yeah, she
Yeah.
kept our cat for like 4 months.
Yeah.
First it was gonna be a night, and then it turned into 2 nights, and then it turned into a week, and then I just didn't ask questions anymore.
And then months later.
And then I was like, please don't take them away from me.
Yeah.
I loved those cats. And I had 3 at first.
You were
that's
watching
right.
Power for
Yeah.
like a tiny bit.
Yeah, and I thought I was that he was gonna end up staying.
We were thinking that because my
forever.
friend wasn't sure if he can convince his wife. But that they have him now, and we actually turned her into a cat person. She'd had pit bulls and dogs,
Right.
like big dogs, her whole life. She's like, that's the
Dope.
best cat I've ever engaged with. And I'm like,
All
oh
these cats.
yes,
Arnie
I'm a
is
cat
a good
person.
mama.
Like, that's
She
awesome.
made some
She
good
is,
kids.
yeah.
So it was the mom and the son, and Bagheera was obsessed with me and followed me everywhere.
Yeah,
Yeah,
And-
but I commend you guys for living in this space with a puppy because
with an
he's-
animal friend. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to get a cat one day not in this van, but maybe the bigger van, if not somewhere down the road. But
You know, Marty, we did lose space. I'm not gonna the space thing. Now that I'm going back to what we were talking about earlier, because the headphones really made me think about this.
Yeah.
You lose the boundary of space and the divisions of it. So it's like she likes to do art, and now that we have a bigger space, her art is out in the space, and she's doing it in the space.
There is something to be said about like having a space and setting it up and designating it to, this is my art space, this is my yoga space.
Not having to clean it up.
Yeah.
Because you become a pro at compartmentalizing when you're in the small space. You're like,
Right.
okay, we put all of our music in this box, we take it out and we're doing music. We put all our art in this box, we take it out and we're doing
that's
art.
cool.
And it works.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's nice to just be like, no, now it's out and it has its own space.
But
Yeah.
the tiny house kind of teaches you to be able to, once I'm done with things, I put it away,
Yeah, like,
and
what
it
is that
has its
relationship?
spot, and
Sure.
you become super organized in a way. Like it, I don't know. It's a different way of living, but it's completely doable.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that's excited me so much about this like minimalist. Yeah, you got it, bud. One of the things that's
Stupid camera.
really excited me about this like small footprint living is like just minimizing our consumption and
Right.
acquisition of bullshit and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's interesting to hear you guys talk about like the things that space affords, because like I don't know, I kind of don't know what I could do
With more space.
if I had
Yeah.
like a little bit more space and
Right.
stuff, because like we're in each other's business all the time.
Right. Yeah.
And it's wonderful and it's limiting in certain ways and it's and that's cool. But like also if I was able to like step out a little bit, would I be more productive in X, Y, or Z way?
Right.
I don't know.
You know, I
Answer to
didn't
that
miss
question.
it. Like, I didn't, when we were in the tiny space, I didn't realize that if we had more space, we'd be doing different things with it, which is clear. Like, obviously.
Yeah, sure.
Once the
This
space
is what I'm talking
there,
about,
you're going to
yeah.
do something. Like, you're not just going to be like,
You
no,
fill
I
it
don't
up.
need that. I'm expert at, like, this amount of square feet.
Sure.
Because honestly, when we were together, I wasn't like, man, I really wish I had space for this. I never really had that thought, know? And then when we have the space, you just fill it. You're just like,
Yeah.
okay. And that's a
Yeah.
weird human, I don't know if that's a thing that we just do. So we think we need more space and we just keep filling it and filling it.
Yeah.
But we definitely feel like we have more, like 3 to 5 times as much space as we used to
Yeah,
have.
we're in
And
about
we
like
filled it. Like, it's full.
1,300 square feet right now. And like moving in, we realized like the moving in process was super easy, but we have nothing to like fill the space with basically.
Yeah.
Then we
where are
did.
we gonna-
But
Yeah.
then we did.
Yeah.
Like, it just came.
And we did, yeah. And
People would give us stuff. We'd remember that we'd left stuff with people to hold while we were living in the tiny home.
Sure.
So then you'd accumulate that stuff back, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh crap,
and you
I'm back
buy
to
a
where I
lot of new
started.
stuff
Yeah.
too. So yeah, like moving into the tiny house was like a purge on its own. Like we got rid of a lot of stuff. Like the hardest thing for me was my closet. Like I'm sure you saw our closet space was super.
But how
duper
did you
tiny.
solve that?
Tell me,
Now you have a
please.
service. Like, it's crazy.
Oh yeah, but I wish I had known about the service before. I do clothing rental now, so I don't buy clothing anymore. This is a rental.
Modern living, man.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
I love
Yeah.
your skirt,
That's really cute.
whoever it belongs to.
So you rent it and then what? You send them back?
You send them back, yeah.
Dope. That's
Yeah.
Did you
cool.
start that in a tiny home, or did you figure that
I
out later?
didn't.
Okay.
I started it later, but I wish
I
I,
wasn't
had
paying
known about it.
attention.
Yeah. So heads up to all the tiny homers. The whole like
You could wear the
buying-
skirt next week.
Yeah, totally. Like all of the clothes that you have, you can just rent them and send them back. So
Oh, that's
yeah.
so interesting.
Yeah, and I
Never
love
heard of
it.
No,
It's
it's really weird.
slick,
Like, our
dude.
generation has so
way
many
more
options and
sustainable.
opportunities that, like,
It's
you
fucking
just would
crazy.
be like, what? Like, that's
Yeah.
a thing? I can rent a whole fancy wardrobe?
Did you hear about these subscription clothing things where
Yeah.
you pay a certain amount and they send you so much every month?
Yeah.
I
But
think she
that's like
chooses
you
everything.
accumulate it though.
Yeah,
still.
because a lot of
'Cause you
them
get to
like
keep it.
like I
You keep what
know
you want.
Stitch Fix. I was just talking to someone about this. Stitch Fix, you keep it. So everything that they send you, like you can choose what you buy, but you have to buy it. This one you can choose to buy it if you like it. But for the most part, you just send it back.
But it's really about the
That's so
space thing.
interesting.
Like, it just
Yeah.
saves space. Like, so now you only need to have, like, regular wear for, like, the week, and then anything else you can just, like, oh, cool, I have, like, 4 outfits that are coming in this month.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
So it killed, like, a bunch of unnecessary closet space.
Yeah.
You just get rid of
When
it. It's just
winter
gone.
comes around, you rent your winter coats that you don't need to store all year round and
To
stuff. so-
somebody in the southern hemisphere.
Or something, man.
Yeah, right.
I've noticed that, like, we're in California and we don't have seasons like other states, but like right
Like
now,
other states. I like that. We have seasons.
like other
damn it.
places, we don't have real winter. Like I didn't
Yeah.
own a winter coat until I moved to New York, and I didn't keep a winter coat until I went to England.
Right, the East Coast is
Like
a
you just didn't
totally
need
different place.
didn't need it here.
Yeah.
Because it gets cold, but it's not that cold, like where you need a big coat. And so right now, like in the van, I have 90% of my stuff is summer clothes. And I keep my winter stuff in my car.
Yeah, because most
And then,
of your
like,
stuff's going to be summer.
this weather starts changing, and I start switching things out. And I've been doing this for the last year and a month. Like,
So do you guys have a
kinda
storage
switching.
spot then? Like an off-site? No?
we used to have a storage spot, and you got rid of it like 3-4 months ago.
5 months ago or something.
So that one
Just didn't need it. It was like just a drain.
kept
Yeah.
it for his bed and his bikes and some other crap.
Yeah.
And so now some.
And now I've got that shit stored at like homies' houses.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
I did. I was
My
like, you take this and you
sister
take that.
and my buddy Jerm.
Yeah, if your
and, like,
parents lived here, I'm sure your
My
parents
mom-
would
Right,
have it
yeah,
all
some of
unfortunately,
it's
sorted.
at
yeah.
my mom's house.
And then your parents bitch about it every time you come to visit. They're like, when are you going to get this shit
I
out of
don't
here?
think I'll
Like,
say
I don't
that
think
right
she's
now.
noticed his stuff. She notices my stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is fair.
For us, family has been key to all this alternative living exploration.
Yeah, totally.
yeah.
As far as the tiny home, as
Yeah.
far as our going out to the desert, like all of that has been.
So what's your end game then? Where you going?
So
Where you headed?
The tiny house was supposed to be a stepping stone to
Tell me what you mean, dude.
What's the final
Sorry.
destination?
what's the point of life? Let's contemplate
Too deep,
that.
baby.
The functional
Yeah.
answer is
Fix my ennui. This is what this podcast is about. Is
why do we do this?
curing my depression. Let's figure it out.
Why do we want to run away from our real homes to these boxes? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, the reason
Sorry.
why we chose to live in a box was to be like a stepping stone to originally to build a home. So we were going to buy a property and build a home, ideally somewhere in the desert where it's affordable and the building codes and fees are not as abrasive as they are out in like San
It's
Diego.
not as, like,
Yeah, sure.
intense. I'm sure you're used to that being on the council, you know, learning all the rules and stuff like
Oh
that.
yeah, I've been building hella homes.
No, you know what I mean, though. You learn about the bureaucratic bullshit that goes in between
Yeah,
all
sure,
these
sure.
regulations. It's just
Yeah.
like, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's, we did a lot of research into that, and we're like, I think the tiny house is a good, like, step to kind of figure out if this is what we want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And once we built the tiny house from the ground up, we realized kind of two things. We realized it's really not that bad. Like, you can YouTube anything. You can figure out how to do
Learn
anything.
a lot.
Yeah.
You can build a
It's
house
very educational
via
experience.
YouTube. Like, it's
Yeah,
pretty
Marty-
amazing.
Marty knows
I mean,
that vibe.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, we had a lot of help from your dad. Like, your dad brought a lot of contractor know-how and stuff like that. But yeah, it wasn't that bad. And then the other thing that we learned was, like, it's probably unnecessary to build from the ground up. Like, I think that we're thinking more of buying, an out-of-date or fixer-upper home.
Yeah.
And
This is
yeah.
pretty solid. Yeah, we're trying to find a place, and we're probably gonna end up in the desert just because of the cheapness.
Yeah, sure.
And it honestly works
And
for
also,
our work.
we just love the desert. Like, we
Yeah, it sounds like
Yeah.
for your
Yeah.
work, it's been going
But we're
real
thinking
well.
a small
totally, yeah.
property that we can then fix up,
Buddy.
because as long as you have that mentality and you learn some of the basics, you can kind of create your own world, like you guys did here, like we did with Tim with the tiny home. And so that's kind of the end game. It's really about freedom, I guess. There's a lot of freedom that you want, and the economic situation in California it's really hard to find that. I want to say just for like in general, I'm sure there are people who are doing a great job and killing it. But I think in the end, that kind of freedom is hard to find here. So that's kind of what we're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just trying to find our little space in the world that we
A little
can
slice of heaven.
make our own, basically. So yeah. And then the tiny house was also like, I mean, you read about like all the sensationalized, like everyone's doing tiny houses now, and you kind of think like, what would that be like? What would the day to day be like? So it is a little bit of like a challenge of what you do and do not need as far as your like day to day living, you know? Like,
well, I don't know about you. I mean, you might know more about this than me, but I found that in general, San Diego County didn't seem very friendly to like the tiny home alternative living trend. It seemed like I hadn't heard of any communities or any like groups that were trying to make it more acceptable, and I'd heard a lot of stories about people not being able to park places and not being able to do that. And so I'm just curious what you know about that, because I definitely didn't feel like I was finding a lot of traction in San Diego.
Well, so there's a difference between like tiny home living and vehicular habitation. You know, those are very different sort of ideas.
yeah.
And my bad attitude about tiny home living for a number of years, because I got really excited about it, but I was like, I'm a anti-car culture person. Like, I think that the automotive culture that we have in the United States is deleterious to culture, community, transportation, and everything else. It's a fucking
Cars bad.
Cars are bad. It's a total dumpster fire. It's fucking terrible.
Do you want one?
I was split one. Yeah.
You want one?
No, we'll
I'm
split
good.
one.
You want to split one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like
Ghost Hammer or IPA?
the thing about tiny homes, for me, I got really excited about tiny homes for a couple of years, and I started thinking about them, and I was like, oh fuck, if you're gonna live in a tiny home, you have to live out in the boondocks.
That's the vibe I
Right?
got. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so if you're living in 200 square feet and you're driving around an automobile that occupies 100 square foot or 200 square foot parking space, what are you saving? You know what I mean? It's like you're occupying the same amount of space. And so tiny homes kind of didn't make sense to me unless you're driving your tiny home around.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Or you have an option like they did.
Well, that's what our option was
Right.
so unique. It's
Yeah.
not the common trend.
or
Yeah.
if somebody you know has a spot where you can like construct and post up or whatever.
Yeah.
But in San Diego, there's this hostility towards people living in parking spots. And my attitude is like, the parking spot that is occupied by somebody who's just leaving their personal property there overnight unused.
Right, just like a free spot. Like, okay, cool.
Well, the deal is, if you leave your truck or car or whatever it is in a parking spot overnight and you're just storing your unused property there, that piece of property is less well used than if I'm parking my house there
Right.
Oh, you're talking about the spot. Yeah.
Yeah.
and, you know, making dinner and making love or whatever else.
Living
it
a
is,
human life.
Right.
Yeah.
in that same spot. And so, I don't know, in Southern California, it's really difficult to try to figure out how we ought to use space.
Yeah, because it's such a limited resource here.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I wonder, like, I know from my dad doing sheds, is like, you guys did the max space that you could.
And we pushed the roof.
Yeah, your roof
Way
is
high.
real high,
The
but
roof's
that
like
10
a
by
foot and a half
12 was
more than
like
it's supposed to be.
legal without getting a
Yeah.
permit. And I wonder, like,
Yeah.
how much of that affects people trying to do do things like that to build tiny homes and shit like that.
I know we
I don't know,
definitely took it in consideration because it was like an issue of, do we want people to look at this and automatically be like, that's totally out of code? Like,
yeah.
and it was like, no, just make it like, 98% the code. And if a guy ever comes by, we'll explain like what's going on. And he'll be like,
Oops, we fucked up.
all right, you guys can't do that. But like, yeah, like it was like ask, forgiveness. not
Well,
permission.
yeah, we did have
And it was a private
contractor
property.
on
It's in the middle of an
site,
unincorporated area.
Yeah.
Like you got to remember, there's a lot of these things that have to do with that. Not that the county's not going to come in and bust you, because that's just what's going to happen. But it was never an issue, and we were always, super safe and all that.
Sure.
Stuff. Yeah, but
I just wonder if it's like
I do think
a
people
common
care. I do
problem
think
in
people
San Diego.
look at it and go, man, if this was just, if the regulations is a little bit different, I could live in this, And instead they're like, yeah, thank you. No, hold on for sure. Yeah. So I do think it is an issue, but I think more of it is just the mentality of the community itself. I think
Sure.
the desert, not the desert, we're in the desert. The coastal communities have a really long-standing, group of people who just have a lot of power, a lot of families and organizations. And I'm not saying like it's all rigged. I'm just saying like it's established. It's
Absolutely.
been there for a while.
Yeah, and I could see.
And they have their rights to their community,
Right.
but how are they going to deal with like you, who are saying like, well, I also have a right to like be here, and other people have a right to be here, and how are you going to accommodate that? Because you definitely don't have a right to Carlsbad isn't owned by a few people or a few organizations or a few families. It's not by anybody who wants to live there. That's how this works. And so it's like, how are you going to deal with that? Because it's not going away. Like the alternative living movement is not going anywhere. It's just not.
Well, a lot of my bad attitude about van life and tiny homes is the most efficient way to live is sharing walls and ceilings with other people.
Yeah.
And to the extent that all these people who moved into Carlsbad and Encinitas and La Jolla or whatever else 60 years ago, they all had a bunch of kids.
Now they want to live in their community.
It's like your child was born in La Jolla, and unless he's a fucking astrophysicist, he can't afford to live in La Jolla.
You living by
And
grandma and grandpa.
So it's like either by nepotism, because granddaddy made a good investment, he gets to live here, or we can increase the population density.
Well,
We can figure out an adaptation.
yeah, dude.
even our alternative living is like a product of nepotism in some way, shape, or form.
Well, that's why I had to point that out. Like, look,
Yeah.
unfortunately and fortunately, like, we had a lot of family assistance in all of our living situations, or friends. Like,
Yeah.
you came out here from, like, you're saying from the Southeast Coast,
Yeah.
So, like, you had to create your understanding of how to navigate the area and how to navigate all of that. And you didn't have the resources of all these friends and family that grew up with these positions of connection. So, like, it is very different, and it seems very successful at it.
Yeah.
Well, but I'm also, let's not
He
be,
came to
let's
here to
not,
go to law school.
let's not, hide anything.
I'm not judging your story. I don't know it. Yeah.
I came from, like a privileged middle class family.
So some resources as well. Okay.
And I've got tremendous, like, way more earning potential than I'm utilizing, like, I'm like a very privileged person. The deal for me is that, like, in these coastal communities, you're not providing the housing for the population growth that you've facilitated.
That you created. Yeah.
Like,
You
And they're actually actively against it. Like, they're pushing at their own, like, there's probably a disconnect there. They don't realize, like, where their grandkids or where their family members are at.
The alternative you see is like there are a ton of like millennial Californians that are like overpopulating Portland and Austin and like all of these cool hip Cali towns.
Yeah, but most of those kids who are leaving are also successful. You got to think about the people who
not
grow
all
up in
of
a
them.
community and don't have the means to leave.
The ones who
and they
aren't
can't afford to live in their own community. That's what I think is going on here. The kids who go to Austin are capable of leaving the area. They're fine. Like,
Yeah.
the kids who go to Portland are fine. Yeah, I think we're talking about the people who are growing up in this area and who are not going to be able to maintain in their own communities because we're outpricing our own relatives and friends and family.
Right.
Right.
They're not supporting density.
They're not choosing to leave because they have the ability. They're just like being like, we're moving to the desert.
Flushed out.
We're being pushed out of our North County community
Right.
because we can't afford it. We don't want to deal with it.
Yeah, and we're hanging on to California with our, you know.
Oh, with tooth and claw, like
Yeah.
the desert. Jesus.
Totally. Which is fine. Like, we love the desert and it's fine, but
I keep saying it like that too.
we love it.
Keep telling yourself that.
Right? Totally. No, but I mean, we want to stay close to family, you know, when we start having kids.
It's a
and
huge
have
part of
family
it. It's just
and
trying to
stuff.
stay
Like,
in SoCal.
Yeah, we want to be around our family.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to move out of state, but my sister is getting ready to move out of state within next month with her two
Mm-hmm.
kids. And, you know, my mom is totally torn up, but it's also just like, you know,
What did
I'm
you
not,
expect?
You
Yep.
avoid,
Right,
yeah.
exactly. Like, not to blame a whole generation or anything, but, you know, this is, you know, we've hit the ceiling at this point, and people have got to, you know, do what's right for them. And, you know, we've just been choosing the alternative living style, which, you know, it's
Yeah.
one or the other.
It's a
You
combination
either
of a lot of
leave
things.
or
Yeah.
you figure out how to live a different way. So, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just surprising how easy the shift was, right? You know, like
Yeah.
it wasn't hard at all, and you don't miss a lot. And then people that you know are like, "That sounds crazy, man.
So
Like,
you
how
guys,
do you do it?" And you're like, "It's so not different than anything else."
Right.
Like, dude, like,
Yeah.
You just have less shit.
So
Yeah.
you've
Stuff
recently.
that you never look at or
Right.
touch.
How is that so hard?
Like-
What was it?
Cool.
6 months ago, 8 months ago, you guys moved out of the tiny house.
it was. You moved out in January. I moved out in May. I stayed for my last
Yeah.
semester of school. My last full semester.
Yeah.
It wasn't.
And
So
I was like,
what
I'm
has changed? Are you guys accumulating more shit or like
a little bit.
Yeah?
Now that we have the space, I want to make my home, you know, a home, and we just didn't have a lot of stuff, so we're, you know, outfitting our space as much as we can. But for the most part, I feel like we're overall like really minimalistic, and we don't, you know, accumulate more than we need. Pretty much everything we have, we use. So
We've filled up the space more. So like before we used to have like I like books. I have a lot of books.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a very limited like library out.
Yeah.
Maybe 20 books. Okay, now I can put out like 40. I can put out more of my stuff. They're not in boxes in the closet.
yeah,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
Sure.
collect
Same with our
records.
guitars. Like
Yeah.
I've collected. I got a couple guitars. She's got a couple guitars. I've got friends who've left me guitars.
Uh-huh.
We only had one in the tiny home, you know, or two. They were wall mounted. Now we have
yeah,
four. Like they just lay around. Like you fill the space up with stuff, but we haven't like actively gone out and added more. Like we didn't go out and look for all this stuff. to
Yeah,
add.
yeah.
We
Keep it less
just got out
condensed.
all the stuff that we had
Yeah.
hidden away, and we're like, okay, cool, let's
Spreading it
fill
out.
this space.
Yeah.
Out. Yeah.
Well, it's just the little things. Like when we were living in the tiny house, I've been collecting records for over 10 years, and we were just talking about this today.
Yeah.
Like I didn't buy any records, hardly any records for the last 2 years, just because we didn't have the space. And
Yeah.
you know, half of my records were in storage, like at my parents' house. And now I'm like, this is great. Like I get to buy my records and like
Have a display.
Between the two of
Yeah.
us, the amount of like
Exactly.
books and records and just like useless space shit we have is great.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're a little old school in that way. We like our hard copy shit.
Yeah, but we don't have like a bunch of
Yeah.
knickknacks. We don't have a bunch of. We didn't buy a bunch of extra clothes because she uses a service and I just
Yeah.
wear the same shit until it has holes. Yeah.
Yeah.
You think you'll always keep it small?
I think
You
we
do a
probably
small-
will.
Yeah,
Nice.
I think this has been like a sort of lifelong lesson. I came from a family of, you know, I don't want to say like materialistic people, but they, you know, would buy bigger and bigger houses
Yeah.
and find ways to fill it. And granted, I'm one of 4 kids, so there was, you know, had to be a lot of space for 6 people.
That's a lot of people.
It's
yeah.
a lot of people. And now, you know, my parents are dealing with downsizing at the same time that we are, so it's kind of
Different reasons, but yeah.
Just because
Yeah.
of empty nest or
Yep.
what?
right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it is kind of funny that I relate with my parents on that way, but
Yeah,
I
that's
feel
cool.
like, you know, you take on that energy when you're growing up of like, all right, now we need a bigger house. And
Expansion.
Now, right.
Expansion.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
And so you do have to, at some point, I think, take a step back and be like, whoa, we don't need to do all this just because we were, conditioned by what our parents were going through at the time that they started.
Like, we had a
doing
wild
this.
conversation about this just the other day where she was saying, like, oh, well, if we have kids, it'd be nice to give them all their own room. And I'm like, why do kids need their own room?
Yeah.
Let's put all 5 of them in one room. And then, of course, she's like, 5 kids. And I'm like, oh, yeah, we should have talked about this before we got engaged. No, but the point was, like, that's what you do. When you have more space, you just say, let's just do something with it. So this kid gets a room, that dog gets a room, this is a TV room, this is a fridge room. Like, fuck, dude. Like, it doesn't matter after a certain point. And then you go, oh yeah, we just needed one room.
Man,
That's all we needed.
I was living in like probably a 400 square foot apartment in LA, and I moved to Encinitas.
Been there.
I upped the LA, not the 400 square foot apartment, just so you knew. I was like, oh, when I heard you say LA, and I wasn't talking about the 400 square foot apartment.
Dude, I used to have a bad attitude about LA.
Yeah.
But I fucking love that city.
Really?
man.
Really?
It's
I've never
so-
lived there, so it's always a visitor's
Dude.
vibe. Yeah.
No, I had such a, like, moving I moved to the West Coast in 2003. I went to grad school in Orange County. I always had a bad attitude about LA, and that place is fucking awesome.
That's wild.
You just gotta learn how to do it,
Yeah, you do. It's mostly the people. You have to learn how to deal with or not deal with the people.
Oh yeah, they're maniacs, man. Everybody there is ready to either kill somebody or die.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
like it's heavy. It's fucking
No, you're
heavy.
doing good at describing it.
But I've done and seen so many awesome things in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
But the
That it's
last,
hard for you to feel more negative than positive. It's more
I
positive. for
fucking
you.
love
Yeah.
it, dude. I love it. And the last place that I lived was probably 400 square feet. It was a like shithole, like big studio apartment above a really loud rock and roll club's
Yeah.
like smoking patio or whatever.
Pure
I bet you
LA.
were my neighbor.
But when I moved to Encinitas,
Mm-hmm.
I came into an apartment that was about the same size, but I had a parking space that I didn't need because I didn't have a car, and a garage that I definitely didn't need because
Yeah.
I didn't have a car.
One of those
and
cute
I
little beach garages.
filled that garage up,
yeah.
dude,
God.
with just
Trash.
bullshit.
Trash. It was entirely filled with fucking trash and a
Just
skate ramp.
all
and
kinds
trash.
of dumb shit.
Yeah, just like I gotta unload my
I
car.
built stuff to put in there. I gathered stuff off the street to put in there.
When I helped him move out of his apartment, I was like, I will do the apartment, but I am not going near the fucking garage. I was like, you do the garage. Like,
Why is it that the garage is always this almost like useless real estate that we're just like, oh, you can just put it in the garage. We don't know what to do with it. And then
I blame
Yeah, it's
it.
like
Yeah.
it's like a trash can. It's like I don't know what to do
is,
with
it's
it
like
box.
a
Yeah.
large trash can. Come
Are
here.
you guys gonna make kids?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're gonna try to get that whole where are you going now? That living situation thing figured out, and then maybe the kids.
yeah,
Oh, right.
yeah.
They keep.
I know, it's
They're all
funny.
wondering. They're like, is it Becca or Dana first?
Oh, it's probably gonna be
I think
me
this is
first.
the thing that families do because
They're,
you're bored all
they're
the
betting
time.
on you.
Yeah.
I heard
bet.
them talking earlier
I'm
today.
sure. Like I've wanted to be a mom.
Come on,
since
Jeff
I
and Dana
was-
are gonna be
since I was old
kidless
enough
for at
to
least
know what
4 or
that
5
is.
years.
I don't know. I put $1 on Dana. We'll see.
Really?
Maybe,
I mean, I know
yeah.
she's my age,
Do
so
whatever
there's a
makes
little
you-
bit of that
I don't
age
care about
push.
age. It just
They're
seems-
more financially stable than we are,
Not
so
even
maybe
that.
I'll put my
Nah,
dollars
it's about
on
the
her.
same. Let's be honest. Like it's about the same.
I don't know what it is. It's a feeling.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
It's a feeling.
It's an instinct.
I mean,
So you both do it, and it'll make them happy, and
You're
then I
making
don't
her
have
blush.
to. So
Well, it's just funny that like our parents and everyone always asks us like, "Oh, you guys are getting married. When are you having babies now?" And it's like we're
What
old
is this,
enough
1960?
now.
Like,
Yeah,
Jesus Christ.
like we're old enough now to understand exactly what having a baby is, not just mentally, emotionally, physically, but like
Yeah, we don't just wanna
financially.
bang, you know? We-
Holy shit, babies are so expensive. So like, I would have a baby now if I could afford it, but I can't. So
Well, you,
What?
You
Oh
grew
my
up
God.
in a
You
you
know
grew up
that.
in a similar community that I did, where
Yeah,
now
yeah.
there are people younger than me that have 2 kids and are married, and it's like a lot. And going on 24, and I'm like, holy shit, that's like a lot.
Yeah, but
That's
going
gonna happen
on.
a lot in
and
life.
that keeps happening, and you're like, wait, there's no rush. There's absolutely no
Right.
rush. My parents were 33 when I was born.
right,
Well,
like,
we're
it's
all just
not a-
different, I guess.
Everybody's different, but it's like, you don't have to do it right now.
right,
You don't
And-
have to get married just so you can have sex. Just do it before.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
This is
See,
2019.
and if my parents would have told me all of these things, like when I was 18, 19, when I, was previously engaged and thinking that I was going to have kids and be married at 19 and stuff like that.
Wait, you were engaged
I
at
was,
19?
I
Yeah.
was previously
I
engaged.
didn't know that.
And I, because you think, like, you see your parents go through it, but you have no idea what the political, socio-economic climate is until you're, at least in your mid-20s, that you're like, oh, I think I kind of understand what's going on.
Kind of. I really
Sure.
like that because I don't know if we really know what's going on until way later.
Yeah, that's true.
Probably
we'll see,
not.
but...
You figure it out as you go.
Yeah, hindsight, you're like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, that was weird.
But like, if I would have gotten married and had a kid, like, I either would have been, I mean, I hate to like speculate this way because I'm sure there are people who make it work and have extremely happy and fulfilling lives, but I would have either been extremely unfulfilled and unhappy, in a job that I didn't like, but just to, keep
Yeah.
the family alive, basically.
Sure.
Or, I don't know.
I just think it's different for everybody. I sat
Yeah,
at
I
a table
think so,
once with
too.
3 other guys, and they were all younger than me, and they all had kids, and they all had families, and they were making it work. Like, everybody's situation is totally different,
Right.
and whatever your path is, maybe it wasn't what you thought it was going to be, but it is what it is, and you just
Mm-hmm.
kind of go with it. And I was really impressed. I was 24, and they were all between 21 and 23, and I was like, you guys are all doing what you got to do. Like,
Yeah, and I mean, you
it's
make
life.
it...
Like, you just do. If you got
Right.
kids, you got a dog, you can just figure it out based upon your values.
Yeah,
Like,
you make it work.
Sure.
You gotta make
To
it
each
work,
his own.
that's all you got, man.
Yeah.
But like, yes, for
But-
you, like, your life has been different.
I would guess that, like, I mean, I would do anything for that dog, you know?
Yeah.
And like,
There I am.
and like people have tried to come down on me in terms of my like life options because I have a dog.
Yeah, yeah.
Or whatever. Yeah, it's like
Like parents
it's like-
get upset that you
Yeah,
call
you-
your dog.
But what are you gonna
your
do with that
kid,
dog if you're gonna
stuff
go
like
away
that.
to do this?
or you can't move into a van because you have a dog.
Oh yeah.
and homies, like you can't have a dog because you live in a studio apartment in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
it's like
and it's like-
never okay.
It's
Yeah.
like, no, dude, like, well, in the,
Dog is better, had a better life than a lot of people.
including myself.
You're like, I spoil
you
that dog
wanna-
because I fucking
Yeah, you want to give him a better life.
That dog
right?
has been to the doctor
more
5
than you go.
times since the last time I went to the doctor.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
You love that dog, man.
But like,
Dog has been more
I
places
also,
than I have.
one of the things that you hear is like, there's never a financial moment when it makes sense for you to have a kid.
Right.
Like,
everyone-
Yeah, we talk about
Never
that
gonna
all
be
the
ready
time.
to have
Right.
a kid. And
Ready.
people tell you that, you know? Like,
Yeah.
you're never gonna be
But
financially
see,
ready
it's
to have
more
a kid.
for me. Like,
Which is kind of like the life lesson for everything. You really kind of get to that point where you're like, okay, unless it's something that you have a ton of control over and you can like prep for that moment, you're kind of just going for it.
Yeah.
It's kind of just happening.
yeah.
Yeah.
And like, we may never get to a point where we can like afford a house in California, and we might have to completely scratch all of our ideas and figure some other fucking life
That's
out.
life.
And along the way, we might just get pregnant, and it might just fucking happen.
Deal with it
you
when
know?
you gotta deal with it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Sure.
And then at the same time, like, look at whatever community you live in. Even if it's a super whitewashed, expensive community like Encinitas, like, half of the people in Encinitas who had kids this year make no fucking money. And so it's like,
The ones who are making the babies,
you know, like,
You'll be alright.
You're gonna be fine.
you'll
Well,
figure
yeah,
that.
it goes back to the whole alternative
You're gonna live until you die.
living thing. It
You
is
know?
like alternative living with kids, right? And raising kids.
Yeah.
You figure out how
Sure.
to do it, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, and I have that weird mindset where like once once you get your kid to adulthood, that kid kind of belongs to everybody. Like, we all belong to our communities and our world. So, like,
Fucking communist.
sorry, dude. I know it's coming out. But it's like, okay, so, like, honestly, though, you have a kid, and you don't do a great job raising him, or you do a great job in raising him. It doesn't matter, because once that kid's 18, he's my fucking peer. So, like, he's in my world, and we're all homies, and we're gonna make this work together. I don't care if you were a great parent or a terrible parent. I have to deal with this reality. Same way that everyone has to deal with my weird issues because of my shitty parents or great parents, depending on how you look at it.
Sure.
I did that really well. So I guess that's my point is like, you know, yeah, we can all sit around and we can blame parents or for previous generations, but once you're 18 and you've been around that block, you know, I'm kind of holding you to it. Like, just like I expect most people to hold me to it.
Fair enough.
But kids these days are the worst, though. We can all agree. Right? They're the fucking worst.
No, I don't know. Like,
they're different. Their realities are so totally different than ours. It's crazy. Like, they have access to things that we could have never dreamed of as kids, you know?
yeah.
It's nuts.
And it's gonna keep getting like that. And
Yeah.
we have discussions where, you know, he had a totally different experience with some form of technology than I had growing up.
Right,
or
yeah.
Well, it's funny. I
anything.
think
It's, like, hilarious.
we spread pretty good, like, generational age, gender difference.
I mean, we're 8 years apart, so we're still both millennials, but he's like old millennial, and I'm like...
No, it's like fun. Like, I remember getting Netscape, right? And like, I was 13, right? And I had my own login and I had my own name and I was like instant messaging people and going to the group chat rooms and all that. But that was already past for her, right? Like AOL dial-up, Netscape
so I was
gone.
doing all this,
she
but I was
had
much
like
younger.
all this, like she had like her own MySpace by the time she was 13, whereas I was like 19 when I had a MySpace. You know, it was like very different as far as where you are when you learn this technology.
Of course.
Yeah, I got in trouble IMing girls, you know, like, because you don't know who's talking to who, and it's like copy and paste. This is what this guy said to me, and you're like, oh, shit. The internet is, like, scary. It's dangerous.
Still is.
It's cool, but it's dangerous.
Yeah. I mean, my parents were pretty good about it because we had, like, a home computer, so they, like, monitored the shit out of it.
Oh, like, your parents know how to monitor. Your parents know how to monitor now.
Fuck you, what do you mean?
I think anybody can figure out how to search web history.
I don't know. I'm just saying computer-wise.
I mean, monitor, like, the computer was, like, basically in the living room and everyone else was around.
Like, get physical control.
Couldn't start looking at weird stuff without somebody catching it.
Exactly. Not that I would want to look at weird stuff because I was a little, like, 8-year-old girl.
Oh, then why did you go online?
Like, logging on to, like, Google shit. Like, Google shit and, like, instant message my friends.
Geez.
Like, yeah.
That was the early internet. That's the world. The world worked.
Internet. Yeah.
That's hilarious.
I'm glad we all got off.
The old internet? Yeah, I'm glad we got off too.
Boobies used to take so long to download.
Oh my god, you get half the screen and you'd already get off. Yeah. Yeah, this was a waste.
Hi, baby.
Yeah.
See, Colette has no idea about that. She's like, what? It took you time to download a page?
She's like,
What a great place to end the podcast.
yeah, I think this is it.
Is that pretty good?
Yeah.
All right.
All right, guys, we did it. It was episode 33 of From the Van, featuring Becca and Jeremy. I hope that you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for listening. If you stayed on this long, I promised to have fewer beers before the recording of the next episode. And if you are having a good time with From the Van, please go to Instagram at From the Van and our YouTube page and follow and like and all of that stuff. We'll see you on Tuesday of next week for another episode of From the Van.